Good afternoon. My name is Marcin Wesolowski and I am Director of Operations for Bidroom. Thank you for joining us here today. We are just going to wait a few seconds. Some people are still joining. I hope you all enjoyed the day so far, and in 15 seconds more or less, we should have most of our participants available in this episode 5 of I Meet Hotel webinar. All right. Again, thank you very much for joining the session. I Meet Hotel webinars are an initiative of Bidroom, and each of our episodes are built based on a survey of thousands of hotels about which topics that we asked, which topics we should cover in our webinars. This episode will focus on the human resources element of hospitality. We have brought together 3 professionals, each representing one aspect of human resources. So in this session, we'll cover 3 different viewpoints: higher education, recruitment, and the hotel, which actually represents the whole life circle of industry professionals. Behind any business, any success, any problematic situations, like the one we are coping with at the moment, there are hundreds of human stories. Keeping employees calm, engaged, and productive was a huge task in the middle of a lockdown due to a global pandemic. All of us have been looking at frontline advices about how to cope with the new normal, how to deal with the uncertainty and support employees through this difficult time has become a major preoccupation for many employers. Therefore, we are looking forward to what our 3 speakers are about to share with us today. And today our panelists consist of Mikhail Romanenko, lecturer at the Swiss Hotel Management School; Milou van Oosterwijk, key account manager at Temper; and Rocco Bova, general manager at Chable's Resort and Spa. Before we start with our first panelist, a short message to our participants as well. After each presentation, there will be an audience 5 minutes Q&A when you will be able to ask questions to our panelists. Please use the Q&A section to post your questions. You can also upvote other questions that you want to have answered. So down in the bottom, remember to use that section to post your questions. Now let's move onto our speakers. And our first speaker is Mikhail Romanenko, a lecturer of MSc and bachelor's program at Swiss Hotel Management School. Mikhail is based in Lausanne campus and is engaged in organizational psychology and organizational behavior research. He creates content and modules, currently lecturing strategic human resources management, strategic management, and managing risk and uncertainty. These disciplines are aligned with his passion for talent development, positive psychology, and inclusive design. His education gathered in Lyon Institute of Higher Education and at the University of Derby, together with extensive experience in the hospitality industry, make Mikhail a very interesting profile to listen to. There is also a special connection between us at Bidroom and Swiss Hotel Management School. I still remember guest lectures that myself and our CEO, Michael Ross, were giving in the campus at the end of 2017. Our contacts with the school resulted in recently signing a partnership between SHMS and Bidroom that aims to ensure knowledge transfer between our organizations and exchange of students. So, Mikhail, we are listening to you.
Thank you very much for the kind introduction, Marcin. I'm very humbled by the invitation that was extended to me, and I'm very humbled by the composition of the audience and that so many have decided to join this webinar. First thing that I'd like to start with the fact that, of course, we are indeed going through a situation which is very delicate. The individuals that are listening to us, I would like to express my understanding of the difficult decisions that had to be made in the recent several months, of course. We had to go through quite some transformations as well. And what I'd like to do today is to present perhaps this as a moment for an opportunity that can be taken an advantage of, right? The fact that we're going from a very fast-paced environment where we are engaged in our operations to an environment that, despite certain difficulties, allows us to reflect. Let me begin perhaps with a short story, just a little introduction how this got me into my area of research. So as a child, I was sitting at the dinner table with my parents, both medical doctors. And most of the time I was witnessing very heated, very in-depth, animated discussions, right? What were the discussions about? Well, they were very much keen on providing the best help to their patients they can. And therefore the discussions were there, as I realized later, to close this really, really important gap between the research, the best available, latest, recent evidence, and the practice, what they were actually advising their patients to do. Admiring what they were doing and how they were taking their work very seriously, I always dreamt of being part of this profession. I ended up in hospitality because chemistry wasn't my thing, and therefore I always thought that this idea of closing this really important gap would be transferred into managerial practice as well. Well, this in medical science, it is estimated, very rough estimates say that for evidence to make it into everyday practitioners' practice takes somewhere 15, 17 years. I thought management should be much quicker for the lack of all the rigor and tests that are required. Actually, what I did find out, to my surprise, was that a lot of best available evidence that is out there doesn't make it to managerial practice at all. And therefore, as an educator, as a former hotelier and currently an educator, I believe that this becomes a very important part of my mission to close this gap. And what better way to do this than to do this through the learners, through the students that we are in contact with. Here's some very simple examples for you right there. For example, roughly 80% of the companies still use the performance reviews or performance evaluations designed in the way that we have been doing them since many decades, without necessarily questioning whether we are doing any good with them, leaving all the legal purposes on the side, of course, or are we actually causing more harm? Sometimes what we don't realize is that the employees are thriving not because of the managerial practices, but in spite of certain managerial practices. And for example, in a lot of performance reviews, let me give you a more precise example. A lot of the design includes self-evaluation of the person being evaluated before they actually meet with their supervisor. What we can, of course, the behavioral science, what it tells us is that by doing that, there's a difference in how, let's say, genders would rate each other, male and female. Males tend to rate each other themselves higher, females lower. When the supervisor produces their assessment based on what the employees have presented, their perception and their score will be anchored by the evaluation provided by the employee. Therefore, that design is scientifically validated to be ineffective, leading to opening ways to biases of those assessing these assessments, but we still do that. Another great example is what are we going to do with working from home past this COVID-19, let's say, outbreak? Are we going to listen to the evidence or at least try to collect data on this? Or are we going to go with our basic assumptions and theory X, like thinking that employees will slack and we're better off having them under our control? We can follow examples of companies such as a travel giant Ctrip, who decided to do a pilot test on about 300 employees that decided to have a control group and an experiment group using the scientific rigor here, realizing that the teleworkers, the telecommunication workers that did their work from home, call center workers, sorry, they were increasing their productivity by about 14%. Which is very significant, of course, when we consider the scale. So examples like that are multiple. Of course, what we are doing in our school is we're trying to bring in the expanded understanding of making decisions based on best available evidence, supported with critical thinking. So the two components are very important. Please do not be alarmed. I'm not talking about just hard data. I'm talking about the combination of scientific literature and empirical studies, of internal data, like the example I've just provided with C-Trip, that they were able to connect. Google, by the way, is the champion of this. Practitioners' professional experience. Let's not mix this with intuition and gut feeling. Two very different things, right? And of course, the input of all the stakeholders involved. One can override the other. Let's say stakeholders' values can override what the theory is trying to say. And that's why it's very important to have this complete view before we make a decision. Of course, as I said earlier, the fast pace sometimes doesn't allow us to weigh all the best available evidence. Maybe this is the moment to actually reevaluate how we make the decisions. And maybe it's the right moment to go back and question, engage in double loop kind of learning, and ask ourselves whether the practices we are putting in place are still valid or not. So as a researcher, of course, I'm a lecturer, but also I view my role essentially as a researcher, because there is no credibility to my practice unless I am up to date as well. I'm positioned in the field of HR, but mostly positive psychology and positive organizational behavior. So I'm clearly interested in what makes people who are the mainstream performers, let's say average mass of workers, what makes them do and be their best every time, every day. So I'm looking into specific practices and processes, but I'm also interested in what processes do more harm that we still do, right? So that's a very, very interesting place to start. Not asking what can we do extra, but questioning what we're doing already, maybe tweaking it in a way that could improve what we're doing. And that's why, of course, my research focused on inclusion. It's a topic that goes beyond diversity, right? So I was very curious about what can organizations do to build in inclusion, which is, of course, a little bit opposite to the human evolution that made us exclusionary in many ways. What can we do to be inclusive in everything that we do, in all the organizational, managerial, and more specifically HR practices? When looking at the statements provided by the companies would be a little bit futile, because we don't see the nitty-gritty, we don't see the details behind it, we don't see the engineering, the architecture of the processes. I have to say that looking at what the hospitality is doing now, we see how far we've actually come in the last, let's say, 20 years, or even in the last 5 years, with now hospitality companies and their initiatives scoring really high and making them employers of choice in different categories, right? We see, for example, companies like Uber, outside of our industry directly, appointing people roles such as diversity and inclusion officers reporting directly to the CEO. So all these are very positive steps. However, we still see a disconnect. So that research practice gap that I just mentioned to you now, that still, of course, exists. And a little bit of the research, what was found is that, first of all, by reading the statements, you will never fully understand what the companies are really doing. And here comes a word of warning from me to those who are listening, particularly those who are managing independent properties, smaller hotel groups that do not have the luxury of the research and development budgets that are available to the aforementioned giants, right? What my research found was that, first of all, I did a qualitative research on HR directors and HR executives at the corporate level of the large multinational hospitality chains. I wanted to see whether behavioral design, behavioral economics and behavioral design, and nudging as practice, made its way into HR practices to make practices more inclusive, something that a lot of companies seem to want these days, and rightly so. What I found was that a lot of HR directors and executives strongly believe in this. However, there was quite a bit of a difference, first of all, in the way that HR directors at the property levels were able to reply to why the practices are implemented and why they're designed in the way they are designed. And that, I think, is critical. You may copy a training program imposed by, put in place by a hotel chain without realizing that one important detail is omitted from the design, and that important detail can actually be detrimental to the effect of the entire program. Luckily, for those who are not part of large hotel chains with big research budgets, we have a lot of literature available. And here is my point, that us, the practitioners and us lecturers, we are obliged, of course, to do our best to look into best available evidence. I'll give you an example of what my respondents told me in terms of training. For example, the literature highlights that diversity training for more inclusive decisions, right, and more inclusive treatment of customers and employees can work. Majority of the companies seem to use that as a mainstream practice these days, right? Without quite realizing that unless you make it voluntary, unless you make it longitudinal and repeated over course of several months or years, unless you are very careful with the group composition, such as gender balance and ethnic balance and whatnot, and if it's not applied in combination with other practices, such as artifacts, interventions on the leadership level and on the structural and design level, the effects can sometimes be detrimental, particularly if you make it mandatory and the groups are not diverse. And what we also understand from the research, but the practitioners weren't quite aware of from my research, was that such training results in cognitive learning, but not in effective or responsive learning. What does that mean? Well, that means that if you make somebody take a test on how inclusive they are, they will score really well, because that requires cognitive thinking, right? That picks out what you have remembered and learned to apply. However, when you are in a situation where you have to act spontaneously, the effective learning didn't take place. Therefore, where slideshow stuck a little bit. Okay, perfect. Same thing, of course, goes for things like use of the artifacts, right? The one where I found the biggest gap was the use of choice architecture. The fact that I was asking, for example, the HR directors of why are they implementing the selection process the way they do it, and what makes them think that that avoids the decision makers' biases to penetrate into the system. They weren't quite able to explain that, which demonstrated to me that the very understanding of intentional design and choice architecture didn't quite make it into HR practice yet, but there's a huge potential for that. By the way, I'm very happy to speak more about this and provide more concrete, specific examples of that. So what research and literature demonstrated as well was that when we are trying to make a positive impact, very often we have to start with design and not the human beings making the decisions. I also would love to expand on that and the fact that only about 5% do we make conscious decisions. This is where that cognitive learning, by the way, can be effective when we're trained for inclusion. And choice architecture, by using predictable irrationalities of our thinking and decision making, can actually yield wonderful results, such as the prevention of speeding in Iceland using this 3D painting on the road, which acts on the 95% of our unconscious thinking. Our conscious brain may say, go drive, it's painted, it's 3D. Our unconscious brain, very powerful, stops us from doing it. And therefore, we can redesign many processes that could actually use those unconscious mechanisms and predictable rationalities of our brains to make better, more inclusive decisions, but that's applicable to many processes within the organization. Last quick example before I finish. That was my 15 minutes. For example, having social accountability built into the selection process may make the individuals act a lot less on their biases. And this is how you can reverse engineer, for example, a simple interview process, which is shown on the screen. So the last point, what should we do? Should we keep going with intuition, gut feeling, and the trends? Perhaps. I'm not arguing against that. However, what I'm arguing for is that in these times of uncertainty and perhaps pace slowing down, we may find it very useful to look into the best available evidence with a little dash of critical thought. Thank you very, very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Mikhail. I'll have two questions for you.
Sure, please.
And please take a minute or a minute and a half to answer them. The first one is from one of our attendees. In your opinion, how businesses should now connect, recognize, and support employees nowadays in the situation in which we are?
Recognize, support. There's so many questions built into that one question, I have to say.
I think we are looking at how we should actually, as business, support team members while they are spread in different places in current circumstances. That's the question.
Wow, that I could go on for ages answering this question actually, but I think the best thing is to remember the fact that the exclusion is very easy when it comes to, let's say, online workplace, for example. That's very, very easy. So you have to deliberately design the interactions between human beings. I think this is where the principle of reverse engineering and behavioral design and choice architecture really comes in very useful. We can take the end result, desired result, the team members feeling included, valued, heard, and the fact that their input matters. And then from there, backwards engineer the interaction processes. What tools you will use, how will this be moderated, who gets the speaking time and when. That's where I would start personally.
Right, thank you. And very quick one from myself. That is a question that I am asking myself in such fast changing environment as right now, with all the changes that are happening. What should we really educate hospitality students about? What should be priorities in hospitality education?
Lovely question. Thank you, Marcin. Thank you very much. It's impossible to, cognitive learning would be very important, of course, right? But what I'm trying to do with my students, and that's why our programs are relatively extensive, is that we are teaching them processes that allow them to learn, to acquire knowledge, and to critically look at the best available evidence. What I was just telling you about, that's part of my curriculum with the final BA students. I'm very explicit with them about the fact that what I'm teaching them in the classroom is outdated or will become outdated. However, the processes that I'm making them accustomed to will take them really, really far in their careers.
Exactly. Thank you very much. Thank you for the presentation and for your answers as well. So we have just listened about the education in our industry. Now it's time to think about hiring professionals to work in our properties. So how can data help with that? How can we ensure not only a good service from people that we hire, but also their happiness in the place that they work at? Our second speaker will certainly help us understand that matter. So our second speaker, Milou van Oosterwijk, is Key Account Manager at Temper. She is responsible for the national and international hotel chains and holiday parks. Her background in hospitality started at Hotel School The Hague, from where she developed practical and theoretical knowledge about the hospitality industry. In her current role, she gives consultative advice to organizations about flexible workforce and how to optimize this based on data. At Temper, they believe in a future where everyone can work for themselves happily. So, Milou, we are listening to you.
Thank you, Marcin. Thank you for introducing me. Hi, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well during these crazy times. First of all, I'm very impressed by the international audience. I see some familiar names as well in attending, so good to have you. My goal today is to introduce you to and to inform you about a new way of working, and I also hope to inspire you with a different perspective towards your flexible workforce. I will first introduce who we are and what we do at Temper. Then I will take you along the needs of the millennial generation, and especially about their work environment and learning and development. And then I will end with how to make better decisions based on data. Let me see if it works. Yeah. Yeah, to start with Temper. Temper is not a traditional temp agency where you request a number of people for a fixed amount of money and then they will arrange it for you. We are a platform that brings freelancers and clients together. So in 2015, our founders had the hypothesis that there's actually not a shortage of staff, but there's a shortage of people that are willing to do the work on the terms and conditions that were offered. So these conditions included, for example, that people didn't want to work for the minimum wage, or they just wanted to have more freedom in when and where to perform their job. So what we do is we enable freelancers to find a job in a flexible, easy and transparent way. At Temper, we value freedom and independency a lot. And we also believe that if you work for yourself and you be your own boss, that you take more responsibility in the things that you're doing. So also the reason why we started in hospitality is that because it's an industry with an extended flexible workforce, but also due to its seasonality. Yeah, so it all started in 2015, as I just mentioned. It started with a minimum viable product in the form of a Google survey. And over the years, you can see that both demand and supply grew rapidly. December last year, we did 300,000 worked hours on the platform. And last year, we also started, of course, in the hospitality industry, but last year, we also started in logistics and retail as a new vertical. With this growth, we think that your responsibility towards your clients and freelancers also grows. And of course, we are not an employer, but we are a platform. However, with an increasing number of freelancers, you can stand on the side and doing nothing. So this year we added the option for a liability and accident insurance per hour. Previously, it was not possible to have an insurance per hour. It was only possible to have an insurance for a monthly subscription and also for quite a lot of money. So we thought, yeah, this should be different. Currently, we're also working on a disability insurance where everyone who works in the hospitality industry will be able to insure themselves for a reasonable amount of money. And that all said, our mission is we enable and inspire everyone to work for themselves happily. Working for yourself should be fun and should make you happy. And I'll share with you in a minute what our approach is and our initiatives that put this into practice. Yeah, so millennial needs. So now you have an idea of what we do. We focus on the millennials and especially the millennial freelancer. We did, of course, our own research on what millennials need in a platform like us, but this goes also hand in hand with a white paper of PwC about millennials at work. This generation is taking a different approach and has another perspective on working. It's also a generation that is loyalty light compared to previous generations. They will have more employers in their lifetime than the previous generations. They admire a sense of flexibility and also wanderlust. So they want to go abroad and they also make that decision on quite a short term. So that's regarding the flexibility. About work-life balance, they are looking for a good balance, but also feel that their employers cannot always meet their expectations when it comes to work-life balance. It's also a generation that is committed to their personal learning and development. And funny enough, this also remains their first choice benefit from employers. So in a second place, they want flexible working hours. And surprisingly, on a third place comes cash and bonuses. So this is really interesting. Also, they would like to have a friendly and inviting working environment and enjoyable working conditions. And it's not only motivates them, but if they feel acknowledged and engaged, they're also willing to give their best at all times. So these characteristics say a lot about millennials and also how to approach them as a hotelier or as an employer. The side of the clients in hospitality show first of all some practicality. So for them, it's important to have that the platform works really easy for them. what's interesting is that they also need a hyper flexibility, just like the millennials need and want. However, this flexibility is more related to seasonality, but we also know that in hospitality, it can become extremely busy out of the blue, or the opposite, there's not much to do while you expect a busy day. To run an organization at best, you of course also need qualitative staff, which can also be related again to the learning and development need from the millennial. And last but not least, lower cost. I think this is a challenge for everyone. They would like to have a lower cost of staff on their P&L. So regarding next. Yeah, so regarding all these needs, we're trying to find the perfect match. It's not us who's doing it, we are facilitating it, and the client and the freelancer, they are creating themselves the perfect match. So how are we doing this? Currently, we selected 3 metrics that play an important role in the process towards the perfect match. So for example, you need someone for in the kitchen. You put a shift online where with the required skills and also experience, and freelancers apply for your shifts based on these requirements. Also, what plays a very important role is the rating. So after every shift, the client and the freelancer, they have the opportunity to rate each other. And the average of this rating will be published on the website. So you know at all times how good or what the quality of the client or the freelancer is. So it's two-way. The turnout percentage, that's the percentage how often the freelancer has been present at their shift. So it also shows how reliable the freelancer is. What we think is most important in the perfect match is the transparency around it. And we think with these 3 metrics, you really show what you can expect from each other. According to the white paper of PwC, and what I already mentioned in the needs of the millennial, millennials value learning and development even over salary or the role itself. Also the traditional approach is that the client pays them for the training hours that they are present. We believe that in being your own boss, you should also invest in yourself. So we started with the Temper Academy, and this gives our client opportunity, and we help them facilitate training days. And we also give the client opportunity to either partially pay the freelancer or not, and let them just invest their time. And an academy like this gives both the client and the freelancer the opportunity to invest in the professional development of the freelancer, but also on the other hand, for the clients, creates an inspiring working environment. And also we think by training the flexible workforce, you really improve the quality of your organization. And in this case, in our case then, shifts get picked up more easily by an engaged group of freelancers. And we noticed that especially for the large hotel chains, this is they have a specific interest in this academy. Referring to the picture, a great example of this is the Holiday Inn in Amsterdam, who recently, just before Corona started with their 3rd batch after 2 successful ones, and which really contributed to the quality of their organization. Well, to measure whether your approach is successful or not, we believe that data is king. So at Temper, we have a consultative and data-driven approach, which enables hoteliers to optimize their workforce and organization. We selected qualitative and quantitative data, and I'd like to show you the approach we are taking in sharing our data with our hoteliers. So this is an example of our client's performance dashboard. We selected health metrics and drivers. So health metrics, they are actually tracking and qualify the performance of a location on our platform. And drivers are the actions you can do to optimize your health metrics. So for example, health metrics are the coverage of shifts, cost, of course, stickiness, so how often do you see the same faces, and also the rating, so the quality of the location. Especially what we what's also really interesting is that, for example, the purple line you're seeing is the location, and the green line you're seeing is the competitive set. So we can put it really into perspective and also benchmark it to another group of clients to see, yeah, are you doing a good job, or can you improve at some health metrics? Drivers are especially interesting. So, for example, reaction time shows how many hours does it take a location to respond to an application. First, when you see it first, this might not be really interesting for a client, but it is for a freelancer. So despite the flexibility, they still like to know if they can come to a shift where they applied on. So this is real data, but we also have, as I mentioned, after a shift ends, you have to rate each other. We asked them for, on a scale from 1 to 5, we asked them how many stars would you give each other, but also we asked for feedback. This feedback will not be posted on the website. However, we are able to share this with them. So these are examples of free flexer, how we call our freelancers, the feedback from them. We noticed that they are very interested in this, and especially HR managers who are not always in the restaurant or at the front desk working there, and difficulties noticing what's happening there. So these are very worthy insights in how the different departments operate, and also how the work environment really is. But how do we see the market evolving? I think there are 3 elements to highlight. The first one is the human touch in your flexible workforce. Treat them as your other staff, especially external flex staff. Also, millennials are very talented, and it's a dynamic generation. So make a talent strategy to create an all-star team in your organization. The second one is, I think I repeated it many times already, but millennials demand greater flexibility. The research of PwC shows that there is a significant gap in what they expect from their employer, and also their experience of the workplace. This is not only regarding learning and development, but also regarding, for example, working hours. And last but not least, data is king. And we believe that you can make really well thought decisions in order to become a better employer. Make measurements, benchmark yourself, analyze your data, and there might be some interesting outcomes that you might have missed if you didn't. So coming to this, and also the last slide, I'd like to end this presentation with asking you yourself the question: what is your biggest challenge regarding your flexible workforce post-corona? I know these are very challenging times, and also something we couldn't foresee, of course. But though I hope this presentation gave you some food for thought in how to approach your flex staff, and especially the millennials. So don't hesitate to contact me after this presentation as well if you still have some questions or interact about this.
Thank you very much, Milou. Thank you very much for this insights. I do actually have one big question to you. So back in times when I was still actively running some hotel properties in Krakow, there was this strong accent on hiring, training, and keeping the core team for as long as it is possible. And our staff was always an important factor in overall success of the company. Yet the world is changing, and we might sometimes really need new solutions. We can basically look more into flexible workforce right now. But how do we ensure that they represent our brand, our values, and overall principles that we believe in?
Good question. I think it's also a point of discussion we have with our clients as well, as they also see it as a big challenge. First of all, I believe it's very important to have a core team, because these people will translate the values into actions and also will give it to other people. However, I think you should also integrate your flexible workforce, and especially your external staff, as if they're completely part of the team. And besides this, an initiative as, for example, the Academy, what I talked about, really enables hoteliers to build a really strong and high-performing team. while at the same time, yeah, improve the quality of your organization.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Milou, once again. I am certain a lot of us will already be looking at some new solutions in our businesses. Now, a lot of us have gone through amazing years of developing businesses, great hotels and services. We have done it with people that we have often known for years. So now in difficult times like now, some of us are making the difficult call, saving the team or the business. Our last panelist is here to talk about that and help us understand how we can go through these difficult moments and those difficult questions. The last speaker is Rocco Bova, the general manager at Chable's Resort and Spa. Rocco Bova is an Italian-born hotelier, a passionate, energetic, and enthusiastic professional with experience from classic hotels to cutting-edge design, from business city properties to resorts operations, and from golf resorts to destinations wellness, with over 25 years of experience. Currently, Mr. Bova is the GM of Chable's Resort and Spa, a luxury wellness resort set in the Yucatan jungle in Mexico. Rocco, we are listening to you right now.
Yes, thank you so much for the nice introduction, Marcin. And I would like to thank also the other panelists that they've been doing a great presentation today. So I'm going to share today a little bit more of the practice that we've been applying at our property. Okay, I think everybody, so many companies are going through the same issues at the moment, and obviously it's not the best time to be in business for many, because obviously you need to make some tough calls. And one of my toughest calls was actually to announce to our team members that we were going to close our hotel. Just a moment, I'm having some problem with. Okay. So let me tell you a little bit about our hotel. So our hotel opened in 2017 with great anticipation, and we were all very excited when we opened, because we had a very specific concept, and the hotel really went very well for the first 3 years. You know, we had a great response from the market. We won several awards, actually 40 in total. So we are doing quite well till now. We obviously had to make a decision to close our hotel, like many hotels in the world, obviously because of the situation. However, our owners, they were very confident and very committed to retain all the staff. They didn't want to let go anybody. And they told me, Rocco will do everything possible to keep everybody as long as possible. So this is a very few companies that actually they've made this call and took care of the staff instead of the business, you know. So what we're doing at the moment, we are obviously working towards the reopening, and we are also doing all possible activities to conserve cash, because obviously without cash the company cannot survive for too long, even though that the owners, they still need to put some money from their own pocket. This is also important to know that we have to do our part. One thing that a lot of companies don't know is actually that when they make a decision to release staff because they want to save the company, is obviously they don't understand the impact that this can have to the public, not just to the team members, but to the public, because team members will talk. We may not talk publicly about it, about what the company is unfair and whatever. And obviously each company, they need to make the call according to their business model, and because maybe they have investors that they have to respond to. but indirectly they will have an impact on the perception of the company, how the company is viewed by the public and the employers and the employees also. So in our case, for example, what we have done obviously salary and benefit cuts, starting from the top to the last team member. And this shows obviously also a commitment from us, as a team members, that we want to continue with the company. We are engaged, and we want to continue when the business will come back. Also, the company, what they can do, they can have a temporary closure. You don't need to half your staff in order to save costs. You can save costs by closing down for a period of time. People can go on leave, or they can go on unpaid leave. There are so many other ways you can do to conserve cash, and survive for as long as possible, because this is temporary. We all know that. We don't know how long. This is obviously the only doubt. We don't know how long it's going to last, but we know that it's temporary. So we also talked to our partners. We talked to all our suppliers, and we asked them to delay all the payment, or maybe reduce all the charges that we had with them. If it's like a monthly fee that we have to pay, we ask them to waive it completely, or to have a discount on the payment that we have to do on the monthly fee. And this has worked. This is working, because they also understand they cannot provide us with the service 100%, so they cannot charge us 100% of the fee. So during this period, obviously, we have to do a lot of activities that we normally wouldn't do that. We wouldn't work from home. Normally, hotel works, on the field. We are in front of customers, we cook, we talk, we meet, we hug, we shake hands. But now we obviously have to respect some of the rules. So some of the themes, some of the activities we have to do with our team was obviously to communicate very clearly, very precisely, and sincerely. We cannot just cover the truth. This is not fair for them, and doesn't give a good image for the company, for the leadership. So we have to be very transparent. We have to tell them what the reality is and the steps that the company will take in order to preserve their job for as long as possible. We cannot guarantee anything, because obviously we all know that nobody knows exactly what's going on. So everybody's guessing. Everybody's an expert now. Everybody's giving their prediction for the future, like the old magician, they have a crystal ball. But in fact, nobody really knows. There's no point to do a forecast, because we don't know what tomorrow is going to look like, or next week. And we also did ask the team members, what else can we do to preserve cash? What other activities can be done, so that we can save some cash and we can survive for a little bit longer. And we did get some good ideas from them. So at the moment, for example, since the closure of the hotel, we created a Facebook group. So these have worked extremely well. We have about 80% of our team members, because some of our team members, they are more on the older side, or they are not very much into smartphone. And some of them, obviously, they don't know how to use a computer. But we have about 80% of the workforce on this group. And we communicate every single day. We put messages, video messages in particular. Video messages are very important, so they can see your face, they can see how you're talking. They can read your body language. They can see if you are genuine or not. And this has worked extremely well, and we will continue until it's necessary. Probably we'll keep this group. Probably is a good way also to continue communicate with them even after COVID. Second, we do a weekly call with all the managers, so where I update them also with what the corporate office is telling me, what the plans are for the near or medium-term future. We obviously don't do a lot of long-term plans at the moment, because obviously we know that we don't know. And finally, we also have WhatsApp groups where we communicate. So the communication is extremely important, and has to continue every single day as if the hotel never closed. We also have to show precise, correct informations, okay? And we have to give data that they are coming from official phones. We cannot just assume, invent, or create information that they are not correct. And now is the time where true leaders shines, really. You know, I've noticed, not just in my company, but also in other companies, how the true leaders really shine, how they can provide always a positive message, even though we know is uncertain. But you cannot be uncertain in a time of uncertainty. You have to be certain of what you say, at least, okay, even if it's little information. And we need to be more empathic. A lot of team members, for example, you know, they work day by day. You know, they maybe never planned for this crisis. They didn't have enough money. They didn't have savings. So we need to understand also how can we assist these people. You know, they're not a lot, but you know, maybe we need to pick these 5 or 6 people that we know they might need some help for the short term. Let's see if the next. Now, what we are doing and what I'm sharing with my team is also learning. You know, there is so much content out there. It's free, it's online, is easily to be accessed. I'm also investing a lot of my time. I'm investing at least between 3 and 4 hours a day to learn or to share what I know. For example, this is 1 hour I'm sharing with the audience and with the speakers in sharing what I know, because it's important that we also learn by sharing what we already know. We have time now to review all the SOP or to create new. As a matter of fact, we need to be ready when we reopen with new SOPs, because we know that we're going to have to be social distancing and you know, washing hands more frequently, sanitizing, and so on and so forth. So we are working on that, and we will be ready. And a lot of things that are available at the moment is also how to manage crisis. You know, there is a lot of tools, a lot of tips that they will help you learn how to manage crisis or to manage people during crisis time. And it's excellent because, you know, this has been the biggest in the human history. And I think it's great, you know. I hope there won't be any bigger than this in the future, but at least we will be ready in the future for another similar crisis. We already have so many tools now that if this happens again, we are ready. What we're also asking our team members now, for example, is also to ask them what can we do in order to generate income, and not just to save costs, because it's not just a matter of saving costs that is going to make us survive for long. We need to start to generate income. We need to find new ideas on how we can make money. Because now we need money. We don't need to save costs because there are virtually very little cost. And we have to always keep everybody committed. We need to work as if the hotel is open. You know, we need to continue to use the staff names and make them part of the community, even if it's virtually. And as a final thought, you know, this, you know, and to give you a recap of all the activities, is a constant, transparent, and honest communication. Always be positive, looking forward statement, provide something to look forward to, you know, provide them with a possibility, maybe not confirmed, but at least a possibility from where they can start from. Provide them with the tools, and if they don't have them, find a way where they can maybe come back to the hotel and learn from the hotel, because we have all the computers and all the system, all the Wi-Fi for free, so they can come and learn at the hotel if they want to, and continuously keep them engaged and motivated. You know, these are the 4 simple steps, which I think you can help every company to survive, at least on the short term. You know, obviously this cannot be applied forever. You know, at the end of the day, and just now as we're talking about learning, I'm also doing some courses online at the moment, and there is one with the New York University, and they are talking about being an entrepreneur as a company. When you create a new company, as like ours, you know, as an entrepreneur, one of the first rules is to make your company profitable. So if you have no profit, you cannot survive forever unless you have so much money, that doesn't matter whether you make money or not. But for the short term, at least, these rules can be applicable, do work, because I've been doing this for 2 months now, and they do work. And I know that the staff is only looking for the day I'm gonna say, on this day, we're going to be open, because I know they will come back exactly with the same feeling and motivation and care for our guests as when they were employed 3 years ago. And I think that's it from my side. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Rocco. I wanted to say that I think everybody listening to you and everybody that knows you is proud that you guys are protecting your employees and are taking care of them in these difficult times. And we all keep our fingers crossed that your properties are back to operations very soon. Now, I'll take a moment and ask you one brief question. Hotel without a guest and without staff is, of course, only a building. Yeah. So everybody is trying to protect our staff. And I had this question asked by a lot of colleagues recently. So some of them were simply unprepared financially for what came. So they say, I want to protect my staff, but I didn't save money. I have no funds. What should I do? Am I a really bad manager? But most importantly, what should I do? What would be your advice for them?
Listen, one of the advice pre-COVID, so just about 2 weeks when we were seeing the crisis coming. So 2 weeks before we were closed, first thing we did, it was actually starting to manage our costs already 2 weeks earlier, all right? And one of the things we applied also for our team members was actually to tell them to start saving costs in their own houses. So in a household, when you start going to buy your grocery, you normally, let's say, I gave them one example, very simple, okay? When you eat your meals, what do you drink? Water or Coke, okay? And the majority of them, I knew it already, they drink Coke because it's cultural. You know, here in Mexico, they like Coca-Cola, okay? So what was my response to that was that, okay, starting from today, you're gonna buy water. You're already saving 50% of your cost every single day. Instead of buying 1 liter of your drink, of your soft drinks, you buy 2 liters of water instead. So you're already saving 50% in your own house. Start from today. Now, for entrepreneurs that they don't put into their business plan to have enough cash flow to survive for a period of time, I'm sorry to say that, but that's poor business planning. You know, you have to have a kind of a crisis plan, because crises did happen in the past, are happening now, and will continue in the future. That's not the last one. We might see other kind of virus. We might see other financial crises happening, but you know, we need to be ready for that.
We should all prepare, definitely. Thank you very much, Rocco. Thank you for that presentation. We are already coming to the end of the webinar, and really I want to thank our 3 speakers that joined us today. I hope that their answers will help you find inspirations for now and for the future. After over 2 months of a global lockdown, it is refreshing to see that there are some returns happening already, returns to normality. I am now here in Bidroom offices in Krakow, and from our window I can see first tourists strolling around our historical square. And although all of them are domestic travelers, it does give a hope that we will soon travel more than in the past 60 days. So let's work for what's coming, and what is coming is the return of travel. The next I Meet Hotel webinar will take place on Wednesday, June 3rd. It will be about sustainability, people, prosperity, and the environment. And you are all invited. You just need to register again at the page that you already know very well, www.imeethotel.com/webinar. Thank you very much, all of you, for joining. Thank you very much, our speakers, for your absolutely fantastic input. Have a good evening and see you soon.